All right, we're right at the bottom of the hour. So we'll get started in just a minute. I'm gonna give it another minute or two just for people to come in, because of the fact that it's Monday. Maybe they'll have to see the alert. Um, Also, I forgot to do this the last session, but the beginning of every class session, I always like to see if there's any questions from any previous sessions or from anything in the pit. And I did get one from Fab, and about the copier, and I am going to try to demonstrate that today if we have time, because the copier is not part of Jigsaw, but it is something useful to know about. I copy through NinjaTrader using the Apex copier, but there's a lot of ways you can copy, and that can be a useful thing in your toolbox if you don't abuse it. So anyway, I was asked about that. I'm going to try to put that at the end. If I can't put it at the end today, we'll put it on the next session. And also, while we're talking about different days, the second session this week is Thursday at the same time. And again, I'm doing that on purpose because I want to show you some setup examples. And then Saturday is our final wrap-up session. We'll go over all the platforms and templates, and have a discount coupon for you guys for any of the different Jigsaw subscriptions or products. So we'll do all that then. What is the difference between these two MNQ? What two MNQ? Yes, Friday is NFP. That's one of the reasons I want to do Thursday. So, because the weekly numbers will come out, and that'll kind of preview what NFP might look like. So, and I may do a live session for Friday NFP. If I do, this class will be invited, but I don't know if I can do it yet because I have a personal commitment. So I have to square that away before I can schedule it. Yeah, the left to right, we have MNQ, we have NQ tick by tick, we have NQ crunched together, 4 ticks at a time, in other words, 1 point. Then we have ES, then we have YM, and then we have RTY. But you don't need all this stuff to trade, obviously. All you need is whatever you want. I like to look at the domes next to each other so I can see correlation or the lack of it. And so all right, let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clean up here. We're not going to use any of my other stuff right now. So I'm going to minimize all these things and get them out of the way. And, if you were just trading NQ or MNQ, you could just use the domes on the left here. And, you don't need to see ES and YM and RTY, but correlation is a very, very powerful thing in certain markets. So let's talk about that for a minute. The reason I do that is to take advantage of correlation. Today is well correlated with RTY the strongest, even though we're kind of at the lows of everything. We were down at the lows a minute ago, half an hour ago. So that's why I have this little market analyzer. That's a Ninja thing right there, but any platform will do that, just showing me what the changes from the close of regular trading yesterday versus where we are right now. And we're reasonably well correlated. And so if you have the domes all next to each other, if the correlation gets out of whack or one index or another is not in sync, it's really, really obvious. So that's the reason that I do that. You don't have to do that, but I highly recommend it. At least some way of watching the other indexes while you trade one of them. I also have this running with the extremes. This is in Thinkorswim, but that shows the gaps and the extremes of the VWAP, which is the blue line. So, I could glance over and see that if I wanted to see if we were correlated or not. That's another way of doing it. And, for the purposes of this class, I may do both. I may minimize these guys and I don't know. Let me think about that. Okay, let's see. Saturday class overlaps with Lee's. Let's look at some stats. It shouldn't. Does it, JVC? If it does, you need to reach out to him and have that.
I am checking that right now. Hang on.
Oh, did he schedule on top of me and not remember that we had that? He might have. All right. Yeah, please check that out.
Yep.
He's going to have to move a couple hours later or a different day or something because we can't run both those at the same time, obviously. Can you send him a message real quick?
Yep. Checking right now. I'm on it.
Yeah, because we were there first. Okay. Let's see. Thank you for pointing that out, by the way, Alex. Sometimes Lee's doing different stuff than me, and I just didn't catch that either, but should have. Yeah, ES is good to have next to NQ, and that's a really good point. So, kind of the minimum set of stuff that I would suggest you have is this. So, this is ES, and ES is liquidity. NQ crunched and its liquidity. This is NQ not crunched, and then MNQ and its liquidity. So let's go with this. This will be a little easier to follow today anyway. So, it, you know, it's important to understand what's in all of the indexes. Correlation again is really powerful in the equity indexes in the U.S. It's also really powerful if you trade the bonds because there's several different bond instruments and they tend to kind of be correlated. But other markets, there aren't really any other markets in the futures world that are really, really correlated. And so with the indexes, though, it's really important to understand the power of that. And there's a couple of pieces of it that are also important to understand. The Dow is very small and it only has a little bit of tech in it, but the tech in it is very big as far as the weighting in the index. And obviously, the NASDAQ is mostly tech. And again, it's the same big techs, well, not all of them, but some of the same ones. And then the S&P again has the big techs, but lots of other stuff, consumer stuff and whatnot. And then the Russell is a bunch of tiny little speculative things. So if they're all going the same way, you can make assumptions about whether we're risk on or risk off when we're well correlated. And right now we're up a little bit with RTY leading. So, absent the bottom falling out of the market, when we got down to the lows, it was a really good long in any of the indexes that we saw absorption down there. Whether you were trading ES, or you were trading NQ or MNQ, they all had some strength and they all got bought at the lows just a little while ago down here. And so correlation is important. And if you don't have the resources or a big enough screen to run everything, I would at least try to get this set on. You could do without the crunched NQ. It just helps you see, the value area all at once and often the day all at once without having to scroll all the way through it to see where the edges are. So that's the advantage of this one here that I've got kind of blue. And that's why it's a different color, because that reminds me that it's crunched together. And so it's going point by point instead of tick by tick, which is actually how it trades. And that's something you can do in Jigsaw. You can do it in most platforms. And I don't crunch ES. It tends to trade much slower and it's thicker, so you really don't need to. But this view right here gives you a decent set of correlated items. And as long as you've got another way to keep track of what RTY in particular is doing and maybe YM, and it could be something as simple as this little market analyzer, that's fine. That works. So anyway, I'm glad you guys brought that up because this is this is the simplest I would go. Okay, so what I want to do today is a couple of things. I did, as I mentioned at the beginning, I had a question about copying, and I am going to try to show how that works. I'm going to do it in Sim. In fact, everything we're going to do today is in Sim. I did get, I figured out a way to show you guys how Journalytics works, which is the Jigsaw journaling program, which in my view is really, really powerful, particularly since it's built into Jigsaw. And if you pay for the live subscription, you get it. And that I think is, there's other journaling software out there, but having it that tightly integrated is really cool. And also, it has a lot of powerful features. So I solved you won't see the pop-ups problem. And so first thing, just administratively, when Zoom is running, it suppresses notifications in Windows. And so my notifications that are appearing, we're just not going to see them. But this is an example of some notifications that Jigsaw has been giving me. It warned me a little while ago. This was right before the bottom of the hour that these bill auctions were coming up. You can see on the economic releases calendar over here on the bottom left, those were coming up, and I have it set for a 5-minute warning, and a little pop-up comes up and tells me it's coming just to remind me. Usually I'm pretty good at when things are going to happen during the day, but sometimes I get distracted, and that's really useful to have. So that's an example of news notifications coming from just having the economic release calendar. And even if I don't, I can turn that on in Jigsaw, and I'll show you that in just a minute. For now, what I'm going to do is clear all these guys, and so we have a fresh palette over there. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take some random trades, and this is the reason I'm doing it in the copier or in the sim. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about what I look for to take trades, but that's really the subject of our session on Thursday. We're going to go through, I only trade a couple of different setups, and I'm just really good at them. That's the, don't learn 10,000 kicks, learn one kick 10,000 times idea, from Bruce Lee. And I think that's the right answer for trading. Most really, really successful traders I know just do one thing really, really well. They don't have a lot of different plays or setups that they trade. So that's what we're going to focus on next session. But for now, I'm going to reset all of the traded volume, and I'm just going to look to put on a trade here for an example. So let's say I was thinking maybe about getting long here. That looks like it could be a decent idea, particularly a little further down. Okay, yeah, perfect. Okay, let's buy some micros. So now we are long at 3.5. And now we have 10 of them. I'm taking chunks of 5, and it's pushing down, which is perfect. So put a target in. Maybe we'll scoot that target down for the first bounce, and maybe we can catch a runner back up into the range. And so I'm going to show you how Journalytics journals this for me. I have it set to talk to me. Ooh, we have a big push down. This is perfect. So we can really get aggressive down here. Look at all that absorption. So, and I'll talk more about why I would do that, but I'm just showing you the journaling tool right now. So don't worry about whether the trade works or it doesn't. And, I'll probably be able to make them work. Let's see. There we go. We got to fill on the first chunk. So we took some profits. Let's see if we can get a little bit more of it off up here, and then maybe catch a runner. There we go. So now we're up about $300 on my little demo, and I can throw a stop under that to protect my profit, and maybe we'll catch a run up. So I have 20, there's 3 little chunks of 5, and I can kind of ratchet that up. See how they're as I click, they're kind of following me up one at a time. That's that intelligent order management that I told you about. Okay, so that trade's over now. And assuming that it didn't completely interfere, Zoom, we should see a notification over here, and we're not. Okay, gosh, this was working 2 seconds ago, but Zoom is not letting it work. And I do have Jigsaw open, so why is that happening? Hang on a second, guys. Zoom might be suppressing it because I have this window minimized. So let me look if it caught those trades. And it did. Okay, so, well, for some reason, let me try this one more time. Where's the notifications? Do not disturb. Focus assist. Okay, hang on 1 second. I don't want that. So we want it off. Okay, now maybe it will work. Fun fact, you have to start NT8 before Jigsaw. Jigsaw, NT8, if you're using the bridge, Calvin, Ninja opens Jigsaw for you. That's what you want to do. Well, anyway, again, you saw a notification over here a minute ago for the news. I don't understand why they're not coming up right now. Let's see. Let me just see if I can troubleshoot this really quickly. Get notifications. Where's Jigsaw? It should be from. It is on banners and sounds. Name. Let's see. Jigsaw's coming in through Chrome. It is set to work, so I don't know why. This is another weirdo Zoom problem. So, all right. Well, anyway, what it would do is it would pop up a little notification right in here, just like the one I showed you a second ago for the economic numbers warning. And then you can click on that, and it takes you to this screen. And So for example, the trade I just did is right here, 322 bucks. What it would do is it would, when that thing pops up, if you click on it, it opens on this screen right here, which is saying, do you want to journal this trade? And you can put whatever you want in here. For example, the type is where you put your playbook. And that thing I just did was a little baby swarm. Okay. And that's what I call that. And, there's things did I follow my plan? I can select these little happy things or not. That's up to you. But the power of it, the real power, I can click right here and I can dictate. It has built in voice recognition, which is really cool. But I can also type and I can use any kind of hashtags I want and I can create them on the fly. So I created one a little while ago for class example, just by typing hashtag class example. And now I can just click on that if I want it to be one of the tags on this trade. But let's just make one example tag. Okay, that's not one I already have. And the second that I do that, we now have that one. As soon as I save that, that will be a tag that I can select in the bottom here. So I can do this trade by trade, and I see all the statistics on this trade. So we made $322. Again, I'm not using any commissions here, but you can put the commissions in if you want to. The reason I don't is I have different accounts and they have all different commission rates, and so I can just tell at a glance by what account I'm in, what it would be. So that's just for me simpler, but you can put commissions in, obviously. And so what were we doing down there? Well, that was the edge of the range. So I can just check that one and see how it throws that hashtag in. And I have example. I said example tag, but I also have the word example. You can do this any way you want. That was a scalp, and it will keep track of those things for you as soon as you save it. Then I can see the fills if I want, which is also handy. And then it summarizes all of that for me. And you can see here's the trade we just did, and there's all those notes. And I only used hashtags, but what if I want to put some notes in? So I can do that too. I can put in the hashtags and I can say, this is an example. Whoops, I got to be able to type to do that. From Jigsaw class. And again, as soon as I save it, what happens is it adds that to that trade. So all the hashtags are there and any comments I made. And if I want to see the specifics, like on that trade, I added to it quite a bit. I can click this and see all the fills that were associated with it, where I bought and sold, because it shows me the total of it here. And as far as the P&L and whatnot. And so that's the journaling portion of this for trade by trade. The other thing I can do is I can journal any given day. And yeah, I think it does, Alex, but I tried all weekend to turn it on and I thought I had it working, but for some reason right now it's not. And it's easier to just show you guys. So I'll get to the other questions in just a minute. So anyway, one of the cool things you can do besides journaling trade by trade, like you just saw me do, which it can prompt you to do, you can also pull up the calendar and you can see your month, and this is today, and I can put a comment on the day. I can see the trades for the day just by clicking there. See my trades, there they are. But I can also say, all right, I want to put a journal note on just today. So it's called a day summary note. And I can say, I am showing the Jigsaw class, how to do a daily summary note. And then if I save that, and again, it will do Spanish and English, and it will translate voice. There is voice capability there. And during class, it's really hard to make that work, but it's really powerful. All you have to do is, hang on, let's open that back up. All right, let's go back to one of the daily, or one of the trades. So we'll go back here and I'll just show you really quick. I'm going to try to see if I can show you a demo of that. Let's see. So if we edit this, let me just put my cursor down here. And so this turns on the voice recognition. So testing 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, it got most of that right. See what's happening? Um, it filled in what I was saying for me. And again, it does Spanish and English, which is pretty cool. So that's also built in. All this stuff is built into Jigsaw. And so, back on the calendar view, you can see that, if I want to put a daily note on, if I want to see the trades, and this little thing here gives me statistics for the day. So, how did I do today? And again, I can have a news stream running. I can see the economic announcements. This is kind of your day overview, as it's called. And uh, there's a lot more depth and detail that we could go through here, but it takes a lot of time. And this is the kind of thing that, play with it yourself. We will have a coupon available Saturday. Peter does offer a 14-day money back guarantee. So you can, buy the platform and play around with it a little bit. And if you don't like it, get your money back. So I'm not going to show everything, but there's so much stuff here. One of the cool things is Profit Seeker. And if you click on that, what it will do is it will break all of your trades down by times of the day and by which side of the market you were on and yada, yada, yada. And look at all the different metrics I have here. Distribution by winners and losers, distribution by whether you're long or short, performance by day of the week, distribution of profits by day of the week. What's the equity curve? The P&L of different periods. Most of these months I had a really nice month, but there's a couple of, again, in this demo mode, there's some that I didn't. Distribution by time of the day, performance by time of the day, performance by what account. You can trade multiple accounts. And this just keeps going, winning P&Ls by symbols, distribution by symbols, by time in the trade. One thing that's really obvious every time I look at this is that I do really, really well when my trades are really fast, less than 30 seconds. And that's where my biggest profits are. And I've mentioned that before. Time in the trade. The longer I'm in the trade, the more likely I am to have a loser. So you can really go crazy analyzing your work and getting really good guidelines out of it. It shows you your equity curve. You can filter by account, by instrument, by the calendar. Look at a month, look at a week, look at just certain accounts for a week. It's really, really powerful. And so all of this is journalytics. And if you have Jigsaw and the live Jigsaw service, this is part of it. And the more I play with this, the more it impresses me, because I haven't found anything you can't do. And being able to go in and like select the account, let's go to the sim we were just running and do that, and it's giving me a week of those sim trades, and I can say, all right, I want to see all for that account, and I want to see them from just today, and so let's just click on that, and that's how quick you can do it. I've done 2 trades. My close P&L is 397, 100% win rate. It gives you all the statistics you could ever want, and you can combine it any way you want. So that's a real quick overview of journalytics. Again, I don't want to spend a lot of time. I could do a whole class on journalytics, and actually I might do that if there's enough demand in TRG with regular TRG members. Just maybe make a over the course of one of the months, do once a week on journalytics. I'm thinking about doing that. So there may be more coming, but in the meantime, that's kind of a quick overview, and it's really powerful, and it's already built in. So, what more could you ask for? Okay, let's see. Owners of journalytics can see everything I put there, all my secret profitable. You mean can Jigsaw see? Yes, they have the database. Of course they can. But trust me, they really don't care what you're doing, Roman. There's some users of Jigsaw and Journalytics that are doing $10 million a year. There's some very big prop firms. I'm not talking about Apex I'm talking about real prop firms with real professional traders. So they couldn't care less about you. But yes, any firm that has the database, that's true with Sierra Chart or NinjaTrader, they have your data. So could they figure out your strategy? Of course. Should you care? No. I mean, that you shouldn't even have to think about that. Okay, let's see. Boop, boop, boo. Okay. Do floor managers want their traders to journal trades like this so they can analyze? That's a great question. And yes, I'm coaching a couple of people right now and they log everything in Journalytics. And then on the weekends, we have what we call our general manager session. And what I do is I go through their performance with them and we look at the trades. And it's very easy for me looking at that to understand what they're doing right and wrong. And you can actually, there's a share button right here. I can share this socially if I want, but I can also, take screenshots or, make it available in big real prop firms. What they do is the firm, the floor managers or the principals in the prop firm will be able to see everybody's trading, and that within their firm, that is. And there's a leaderboard built into it. I don't participate in the leaderboard, but it's there. And see, this is why $4 million in profits. This is why you shouldn't worry about them seeing your stuff. And this is the daily leaderboard. Let's look at the monthly. I've seen real traders who I'm aware of that have ridiculously big numbers. And so anyway, I don't participate in this, but yeah, there's a $66,000 month that one's got going. And so yeah, very, very, very cool stuff there. Let's see. How to set up the playbook. Oh, that's a great question, Larry. Let me show you where that is. If you remember when I showed the example trade a minute ago, let's go back to the trades and let's bring this up and let's just pick that one we were in. So that thing is called the trade type. And I frequently forget where it is, but I think I can find it now. I hadn't prepared that question, but let's see. It's not there. Playbook. It's under playbook. You go here and see that was a baby swarm, but let's make a new one. Let's make a play type called Jiggy class. Okay, so that might be a certain trade setup, and example of trade setup. And we'll play around more with this in the next session on Thursday, because I'm actually going to go through some of my setups and show you examples of them. But let's just make a new one here called Jiggy class, and we'll create that. And then real quickly, let me just do another trade here, and I'm just going to do a quick scalp in NQ, and boom, there's $30. And oh, I heard it. It is suppressing them. I just heard a beep. So yeah, Zoom is suppressing them because it made that tone when something can't pop up. But anyway, it's still in Jigsaw. Maybe next time I can figure that out. And so if we go to the My Trades, and let me just refresh this real quick. And okay, whoops, sorry, didn't want to do it there. Okay, there it is. So now if I go to journal this trade, I can say, okay, that was my Jiggy class. So that's how you do that. And that was a great question. If you have your setups identified like that, then when you take a trade that's not a setup, default will be none. You could put not a setup there, but then I have examples of, that's some of the tags I use. Stupid lizard, stupid lizard example, testing. You can chastise yourself too, if you will. And did I follow my plan? No, because that wasn't one of my trade setups. Did I react well? No. How am I feeling? I feel crappy because I did that. So there's a lot of ways of doing simple little things just by clicking on things or talking to it or using the drop down for your different trade setups. So that was a great question. Thank you for bringing that one up. I'm going to pause here for just a second and go to the Zoom settings and just see if I can see that, because I'd really like to be able to pop it up, but let's see, just let me look on any of the quick places if it's allowed to unmute, see if there's something that says hide profile. No, I don't. On any of the little dots, I don't see any of those. Anything that'll let me, I may have to do it when it's not running, but there's nothing really obvious that, allow pop-ups or allow, focus assist on or follow focus assist. No, it's not there. Okay, so let me continue with the questions. As part of the proposed class, consider discussion of how to use kernels of data and stuff. Yes, that's a good question, Bob, and I will consider that absolutely. They can't figure out what's. Yeah, no. Look, even if the biggest traders on the planet don't care if people see what they're doing, because it's not. There's no secret strategies, Roman. There's only good execution of the same strategies. Everybody's doing roughly the same thing. Some people are scalping, some are trading structure. Some are just scalping ticks in ES. The large successful traders couldn't care less if you see their P&L or even where their fills are, because trying to duplicate it is nearly impossible. So that entire line of thinking, you're on the wrong track. There's no secrets in this. People that tell you, well, if you come to this class, you have to sign a non-disclosure because I'm going to tell you secret stuff. Run away as fast as you can. There are no secrets. Everything is that people use to succeed is the same thing, and it's just a question of good execution and good practice. So that's just a road you don't want to go down. Is it a demo leaderboard? The leaderboard is both. If you share your trades on the leaderboard, you can share anything you want, and the level of detail is up to you. So yeah, some of these could be demo trade accounts. Some of them could be real accounts. Again, that shouldn't really matter. One time, just to show that there was one thing missing here, this is a pretty funny story. About 5 years ago, I asked Peter, how come we can't look at the account size here? Because, here's a $4 million net P&L, and, I'd like to know how big an account that guy's trading. And Peter said, yeah, but, the prop firms don't want to do that. And I said, well, how about for retail traders? And we talked about it for a while, and he didn't see the value of it. So just for fun, I created a sim and I put it up on the leaderboard. And what I did was every time we got to an extreme in the market, I just kept fading it and kept adding to the fade, which is a really stupid strategy. That won't work over time. But what it will do is when it starts to win, it will make ridiculously big winners. So I started posting $70 million days, which is not realistic. But everybody started emailing Peter and saying, who is this guy? What's he do? What's his strategy? They were thinking like you were. And so, a leaderboard is just a way mostly for people that have a relationship with each other. They're in the same prop firm, or they're both trading at Apex, or they have a bet going, who can get to withdrawal faster. That's where the leaderboard is helpful. But, thinking about privacy and stuff like that, you're really on the wrong track for how to use a tool like this. All right, let me just leave that there. Let's see. Okay. Still searching. Yeah, Norden is a really good example. He makes people sign a non-disclosure agreement, and then he proceeds to tell them stuff that everybody else does. And we've had a number of TRG members that went through his course. It's like $5,000, I think, for a couple of days live. And again, I don't want to just criticize Gary Norden because he is a decent trader, but he's not a great instructor. And Peter no longer works with him on that because the feedback wasn't very good. So anyway, but again, if you're ever in education in trading and they want you to sign a non-disclosure, you should run away because they're trying to create an aura of secrecy and exclusivity that isn't real. There is nothing like that. A good educator can teach you a technique or how to use a tool, but everybody is executing in the same environment. There are no magic secrets. There is no holy grail indicator that will tell you buy here, sell here. The sooner you can abandon that kind of thinking, the better. So yeah, the NDA, exactly. Okay, so I covered all the questions. Cool. All right, so what we're going to do now, I'm just going to leave this open. And what I wanted to do for the bulk of this class, and we'll do it for the next 25 minutes or so, and then if there's questions, we'll we'll address the questions, is first of all, I'm going to just reset all the traded volume. So I just reset all the DOMs. Oh, and by the way, this is another good thing to know. There's lots of good little things to know. I have I have a couple of ways I can do that. This button right here centers the DOM you're pressing it on. So I'm pressing this MNQ, it's centering me. And if I right click that, so that's my normal left click button. If I right click it, it will center all the DOMs. And that's true of all the buttons. So if I press this, it wipes out all the traded volume just on this DOM. But if I right click that, it does it on all of them. You can also, so you asked me about programming shortcuts. I've got shortcuts programmed on my mouse buttons. So if I want to center it, I just hit that mouse button. And notice how I didn't click on anything. My mouse is over here, but it's centering. And I can also reset the volume the same way. I'll just keep recentering it here with my mouse button. And so you can program a mouse or, a gaming pad, whatever you want to use to do whatever you want. And I find I have 5 buttons. This mouse has 6 buttons on it. I have 4 of them programmed. One centers, one does the same thing as the little garbage can. It resets all the traded volume. One is flattens everything out. And then I've got the other 2 are buy at the market, sell at the market for whatever DOM I'm on. So right now this DOM is selected, so it would do that if I press those buttons. So hang on one second. Okay, that's better. Yes, JVC does use an Xbox type controller. And, hey, some people can trade really fast on that stuff. One of the guys I talk about that's one of my mentees is Video Game Guy. And he uses one of those pads where you can program buttons and also uses a mouse. I exclusively use a mouse. And we've got a nice little setup here. So this is an example of some good traded volume right into a typical inflection point. So let's do a baby swarm down here. And what I'm going to try to do is get long, but I'm going to scale it if I can. Otherwise, I'm going to protect my profit like I'm doing now. And let's see if we can catch a runner maybe back up to here. So I can put a target up there and then trail underneath it. So if it shoots up there, it'll fill. And otherwise, it'll protect me to the downside. So that's what I'm doing here. And there we go. So then I can cancel this just by right clicking on it. And I can put those up by clicking. So you can do anything on any of the DOMs that way. So let's see if we can do some more trades here. You can see I've got a couple orders down here. And let's see what we can do with it. So the first kind of thing that's really important to get used to is the most important thing you can watch. The tapes are useful to tell you the momentum or where the blocks are. And, the economic releases calendar tell you when there's news coming up or economic releases. The summary tape can kind of show you the trading at each level. But you can get rid of all of that stuff and just trade off the DOM because that's really what you're trying to do. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and do that and that and that. And this is just a Sierra chart thing I use for the range. So we'll get rid of that and we'll minimize that. So now all we have on here is Jigsaw. And I'm going to show you some examples of how to use the traded volume and the liquidity and their interaction with each other to find good trades. And there's a good setup here. It just needs to go a little bit lower. So I'm going to cancel what I've got there. And I'm going to use this opportunity to take a quick bathroom break. I'll be right back. I'm drinking a lot of coffee today. And then we'll do, for the rest of the session, we'll do examples of what you're looking for in the traded volume to trade with nothing else on the screen. So this is the only information we're going to be using. Is execution immediate? That depends on your computer, your internet connection, and your data provider, Roman, as it does with any platform. But if all of those are working well, and I'm on a really fast data connection, I have a very fast computer. If I hit a market order, yes, I get filled pretty much instantly with very little slippage. But that may not apply to you. It may, that depends on all those things I mentioned. Some people will set up a virtual private server. Lee does that. And some other TRG members do as well. And what that means is you can lease a computer, space on a computer, right next to the CME in Chicago. So you will have absolutely no lag. Then all you do from your computer is you dial into that virtual server and you run all of your software on that virtual server. So instead of running Jigsaw on your computer, you're running Jigsaw on that VPS. And then you will have the fastest execution possible. That's what people that are trading algorithmically or using bots do. And I will be happy to answer more questions about that or elaborate. That was a really good question. But I'm going to go get rid of some coffee. So give me a minute. I'll be right back. And real quickly, let me throw back to you. JVC, are you back?
I am here, yes.
Did we clear up Saturday? What's the update on that?
I have not heard yet. I don't think Lee's been back to
Okay.
his desk.
Okay. Okay. And I'll answer all those questions. Yeah, Vinny, E-Mini Vinny, that he's one of the charlatans of the business. You want to run away from that guy as fast as possible because that algo box stuff he's selling, that's a multi-level marketing scheme like, Amway or whatever. It's a pyramid scheme. Pay a lot of big affiliate fees for everybody to tell everybody it's great. And it isn't. Anyway, none of that stuff is. Anything anybody, is willing to sell you and promote the hell of like that's probably BS. All right, I'll be right back. Okay, I am back. So let's see. All right, there's a really good question there, Roman. And what you're really asking me, your question, I'll read it for everybody. If there will be 1,000 MNQ contracts to execute, will it be the same price for all contracts? No. That's what liquidity is all about. Roman, a lot of your questions demonstrate to me that you haven't taken the Make Tick courses that we gave you with this class on why price moves and how it moves. And there's an example in the Tick course that it directly covers that. But liquidity is what determines where things fill. So for example, right now, if we look at MNQ, there's 10 to 15 contracts bid at every price level. And roughly that, maybe a little bit more on the offer at every price level. You can see them in this column. So if somebody suddenly put up a 500 contract order, let's say they were selling, it would take out all of the liquidity until it found a total of 500 contracts. That's how futures markets trade. And this is a critical concept. And if you don't take the Make Ticks courses, you're not going to understand it. And so, there's no way I can emphasize this more without getting profane. Seriously, you've got to do that because at least half your questions are answered there and you'll understand price movement once you've done that. And it's free with this. So that's all. I'm going to leave that there, but you're doing yourself a massive disservice if you're not doing that. Let's see. Oh, absolutely. You can trade anywhere you want with a good VPS as long as you have a good internet connection to the VPS. And it's funny, Jeffrey, my dream was always to trade in the Caribbean. One of my old girlfriends has St. Kitts citizenship because she, opened a business there. She's American, has dual passports, and I always thought it would be really cool. I always loved going to the Caribbean and that part of the world. The problem down there in some places that are really beautiful is that the power and internet infrastructure isn't very good. My friend Jason likes to travel around the world with his young kids. They're a little older now, but he did a stint in Costa Rica, and his wife teaches English and he trades. And, the power would go off twice a day at random times. And so, that's the problem with getting too far out into boony land. You can put your trading on a virtual server, but you still need to connect to that virtual server. So, but it's absolutely doable, totally. Let's see. If one clears the volume, then we are training. Then what are we? If one clears all the volume, then what volume are we trading now? You mean if I do that and get rid of the current volume, what's appearing? Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
Am I on the,
I thought
okay.
he was asking about sweeping the book, but no.
Yeah, no, the liquidity is here. The traded volume is what's coming up with the colors, pinkish and bluish. And so if, for example, if I clear the current volume, it will start over with, fresh and show me what's trading right now. And see, we just had a bunch of sell side stuff and we're going down a little bit. The one to the right of it, we went over all this in the first class session. This is called total volume, and it will stay and keep accumulating the current volume until you reset it. And if you leave it on all session, you'll have a perfect bid-ask volume profile. You'll have a footprint basically. And that's why Peter doesn't want to put the bid and ask on the volume profile here, because you get it on the column just to the left of it in my where workspaces. So do you understand the answer? Does that make sense? Did I answer the correct question? Okay, yeah. So, and the way current volume works, the column closest to the price, the two columns there, the bid and the ask of traded volume, it will show you the volume that happened the last time it traded there. And then if it touches it again, it resets it itself, but it leaves the pattern above and below that. So if you look at as it gets to a level, it clears it out. That's called current volume. And that's so you can see what's happening right now. But sometimes I like to just clear it myself just so my eye doesn't get distracted. But that's a good question. Excuse me, burping. I'm just looking back and making sure I caught all the questions I did. Okay, so on Jigsaw, if I look at your template, your symbols are in the platform. In mine or local, what's the difference? I'm connected to NinjaTrader 8, but you need to download. This is more of a support question, but there's a function. You have to download the current symbols regularly in Jigsaw or it won't know what they are. But it can always get whatever is in Ninja if you're connected to Ninja with the bridge. But for example, if there's, let me show you where that is. All right, let me just bring this over here. So subscription monitor, this shows me what I'm connected to and what I'm paying for. I can clean expired symbols out. And so they will go away, things that are no longer current, like that. And then, let's see, where did that go? If you want to go get, let's say there's a symbol you're not, I'm trying to figure out the easiest way to show this. It separates your symbols into what you're connected to with a platform like Ninja 8 and what's local. If I had a data feed running that was not going through Ninja, it would come up as local. And what it will do when you first establish a new connection, which you do in the connection manager, one of the things you can do, like here's my amp and my iron beam, see that download instruments. I don't have these connected right now, but if I did, you click on download instruments and that's how it brings them into Jigsaw so that you don't need to go get them in Ninja 8. So that's the answer to your question. Do you understand that? Does that make sense? I'm getting these mostly right now through the platform, which is coming from Ninja 8. That's this. But if I wanted local symbols, I have to create that connection, connect it, and then go to download symbols. Good. Okay. Yeah, that's a good question. That can be confusing. There's a really good explanation of that, by the way. And that's a real common confusion for people that are new. In your stream in the pit, I put a couple of Jigsaw resources, and let's get to that. Jigsaw resources right here, and the day trader manual. If you go there and you go to platform setup and configuration, and it will go through download instruments. It will explain how that works right there. That's what I just showed you. And you have to do that only for instruments that you want to put in Jigsaw that you aren't getting through a connection, for example, to NinjaTrader through the bridge. If Ninja has it and you're connected that way, you don't even need to worry about this. Okay, good question. All right, let's see. I think I'm caught up on the questions. Okay, so there's some other, we're starting to get some volume here now that I can see where some inflection points might be. Here's an example of a little trade setup you could do. Right now, there's pretty good absorption right here in the low 90s. See that? It's all traded on the bid and there's lots of volume there. So what we could do is we could look for a long on that absorption again. And, obviously it would have to cooperate and get down there, but, I could front run it a little bit and maybe watch where the liquidity is. It's a little lower down, maybe there. So this is an example of trading into that inflection point. You know what? I'm going to grab the market right there because it wasn't going to get to my first target or my first entry I was trying to get, but it did. So now I can take some of it off And now I still got 5. I could protect that and maybe catch a runner up. And all I got to do is click on the price to trail it. I can also set it up to auto trail. I don't like to use that, particularly if I'm doing, PAs or evals, because, the trailing drawdown works against you. So you want to get out of trades at the maximum profit, and you don't want to let it pull back on you at all. So again, that absorption is still happening there. So let's see if we can do that trade again. And this time we'll just use a target and see if we can catch a quick, $25 here. And otherwise we'll scale it a little bit. There we go. Okay, perfect. All right. See, there's the absorption again. So, they sweep down, they take out stops, and then they go back into the range. So, this could be the beginning of a down move, but as long as we're trading on the bid and not getting pushed down a lot more, let's move that one, then this is likely to set up a decent long here. And let's scoot this up. Maybe we'll catch a pop, take the first part off pretty quick. Again, there's that absorption. So I could definitely scale this. As long as that holds, I can make this area work, but because NQ and MNQ move around so much, you kind of have to let it come to you. And I'm going to show you a lot more of this on Thursday session. But see, we're still getting absorbed there. Look for a sudden sweep up here because there's buyers down here, and we're going to run out of sellers at some point. You can see these high volume nodes. This one's there's a little bit of ask volume there too. And today's a very, very sweepy day. We're sweeping in both directions up and down, but it's still a good spot. You can see the crunched NQs absorbing. We're not seeing great absorption in ES, but we are seeing some. It's a little bit on the wrong side of the market there. So this might go a little lower, in which case we can scale it more aggressively. Otherwise, there we go. Oops, sorry. I was going to move that target right when it swept up there so we can get the first chunk of this off. Let's try to do that. And there it is. Okay, so now we've got some profit in the bank. And, maybe I can scale into this again a little lower, a little more aggressively. So let's do that. Oh, it tapped my trade down there. It didn't fill it. Probably at least get a run back up to 0.0 here so we can scale around that. See that absorption? That absorption in the trading volume is a very powerful scalping tool. And again, this is the topic of this week, today and next week, but I also wanted to do the journalytics and whatnot. And typically what it'll do is go up to the next area of volume, which is somewhat up here. So that's a decent target. But since I only have 5 left, I could instead try to get a runner and just protect it, keep the profit I have. And if we pop up, I can just trail it like you've seen me do a few times. So, and this is why I don't use brackets, because it would be really confusing which bracket was tied to what. And this way, I just manage my buys and sells. And if I need to get the heck out of the way, I hit flat. Here we go. This is going to be a nice little runner here. Let's get that target out of the way and see if we can ride this up. So it's $75 here. It's probably going to push back down right at 0.0 here. But if it can get back up to the value area, that would be an ideal place for a target. So let's trail it a little tighter. And we got it. That was $80 with 10 micros. And yeah, I keep hearing that noise. That must be Zoom suppressing the pop-up from Journalytics. I'm sure that's what that is. So when the session ends, I'll give it another try to see if I can figure out how to make Zoom not do that. I thought I had that fixed, but there's no way to test it without starting a class. So let's see if we can get a fill down here on this absorption again, because the market's pushing down. But, we're catching really nice little bounces. And again, I'm not looking at anything else but the traded volume. See all that traded volume right there? That's powerful. You could also pop up the footprint and see what's going on in ES. Price rejector at the top. There's UB right at the bottom of the session. So ES might want to go a little lower. So that, where's the bottom of ES is right there. It's like 3 points away. So, maybe down in here would be a good spot to scale that. So let's see if we can get a fill on that first order there. It traded right to me, and see there's absorption there again. So that means I'm in exactly the right spot. The liquidity is above me though. So if I really wanted to get filled, I'd be more likely to get filled here. And I may not even be able to get filled here, but that's how you can look at the interaction between the traded volume and the liquidity, because it's a dynamic interaction. And now we're going to trade back down there, and maybe we can get a fill this time. A little bit of down energy, but clearly there's buyers right here. And again, I'm not looking at the tapes. I'm not looking at power meters. I'm just watching the traded volume. This is at the moment where the buyers are, and they're pretty aggressive down here. So we might plow through that, but so far it's been a good place to play this. And, conditions change constantly. And there it goes. So, when you run out of sellers, you catch these really quick moves like that. I'm not in this particular one, but from that exact spot, this is like, what, almost 10 points. So it's more than 10 points. Sorry. It was about 12 points. Okay. Um, okay. Why does the traded volume disappear when we trade through it? Because that's in the current column. It doesn't disappear over here in, let's just get rid of the current. See, it's still there for the total, but the idea of the current is to only show you the volume that occurs the first time we go there, the most recent time, because that's all you really want to know. Like right now, there's absorption on the blue. That's the ask side. So this is buyers getting absorbed at this particular moment right there. And so that's what you want to know. That's what that set of columns is for. And then the other one, it's adding up in. So that's what the paintbrush does. It just clears the current, not the total volume. And you can see that absorption there. And now we're going back down. You see what I mean? On any given time of the day or night, all you've got to do is identify where people are buying or selling, and you can scalp. That's not what this class is about. This class is about this platform, but I'm showing you how I use it to do what I do. And here's all the trading we've done, both my live trading this morning and the demo trades I've done. It works. I don't know what else to say. That's why I have a 97% win rate on this stuff, which is too high. I should be a little more aggressive, but sometimes, it's nice not to lose money. So let's see if we get another push down here. This is still too low, right? See, you want to go right on the last bulge of volume, and there's a little high volume node here. See it? So that's a good spot to nibble in, and maybe right at 0, but it'll probably trade through that if it comes down again. And you can see the current volume is updating, and it's totaling into the total volume. That's what the difference between the two columns. So here it comes. Let's see if we can catch a little sweep down into, see the liquidity's right where I am. So I need to be a little bit higher up. Maybe right here, there's liquidity right at 0, and then the next chunk is right there, so I can get right in front of him. He's going to move around a little bit, but that's a good potential spot to grab a quick long. And again, this is more about how to be a good scalper, not use Jigsaw. But what I'm showing you is that everything I need to know is right here. And this is what you should aspire to. Roman, once you learn, what the terminology is and how price moves up and down, then the only thing you need to see is where's the liquidity and where's the traded volume. Everything else I normally have on my screen is contextual for me. The tapes, those little LRCs in NinjaTrader. And I did a whole series of classes for Jigsaw. This is all contextual. I did a whole series of classes that are in the Jigsaw, in the TRG library on Jigsaw. And I traded on my other computer that only has this on it. There's nothing else on the other computer, the one to my right here. And so this is a perfect trading environment. If you learn how to read the trading volume on the Dome, you need nothing else. The other stuff can maybe make you a little better at it and keep you from making mistakes. That's what those things do for me. But markets move up and down. We talked about this in the pit. What makes price move? The relative aggression of buyers and sellers. And it goes up and down until it finds buyers. If it's going down, it goes down until it finds buyers. If it's going up, it goes up until it finds sellers. When there's more sellers than buyers, that's where it will pause. So again, let's see if we can catch a little fill right here. It's trading 0. It's right there. Boom. Okay. So it came to me. We got a good fill, and now we could protect that and maybe catch another pop up. There we go. That would have been a $50 trade right there. Oh, now it's a $60 trade. Again, I'm doing it in sim. That's why I'm saying would have been. But that's how you use the traded volume. It tells you everything you need to know. You don't need anybody's indicators. You don't need anybody's magic secrets that you have to sign an NDA for. All you have to do is learn how to read the traded volume and how it interacts with the liquidity. That's it. If you can get to that point, you can make as much money as you can afford to take risk on every day, because it doesn't matter what's going on in anything else. Just the price action here and how it interacts with the order book gives you all you need to know to scalp effectively. And I don't know any other way to emphasize that than the way I am. I'm like screaming it. This is it. This is the holy grail. Watch the traded volume. Watch how it interacts with the liquidity. And yeah, it's helpful to see how the order book is flipping over. That's why I've got the flip charts. And yeah, it's helpful if you're running a tape or two. You can see where the blocks are. But you know what? Those things are training wheels until you learn how to read the DOM. Once you learn how to read the DOM, you really don't need that. Let's see if we can get another fill here down at 95 and change. I'm probably, again, a little too far down. Just there we go. Okay, and here's how about a use your computer as an ATM and just you want a $20 bill, boom. I'm doing this with 5 micros, and the minimum we've made on any of these trades is $20. And on a couple of them, we made 320 on one of them when I scaled it a little bit more aggressively. And this is with little blocks of micros. This is how you trade for a living. You don't need anything else. Yes, again, these little things can help you learn. The other things, they can help you not make mistakes. That's what I use these for. Why do I have these then, Jeff, you ask? Well, number one, I copy through NinjaTrader. So having NinjaTrader running and connected is useful. And if I have time, I'll show you how the copier works. If not, I'll show you that Thursday. And then let's see, we need RTY, and then we just need NQ. I'm just looking to see which ones of these aren't maximized. There we go. And yeah, if I bring up the internals, it tells me what's going on with the equities, and that gives me a little more information. And, again, for an experienced trader, that doesn't tell you where to trade. It tells you if you're wrong or not. Like if I'm looking to scalp like I've been doing long down here and the tick was at minus 1,000, I wouldn't do it because, all right, the equities are selling off, so that low isn't going to hold. But when the tick is flat here, every time we push to the bottom of the range, I'm a buyer because unless the equities are also going down, the futures aren't going to go down much more. It's that simple. And yes, it's useful to have the economic calendar up. It keeps you from making a mistake of being in a trade right when a news item comes out. And yes, having the LRCs, these guys in NinjaTrader and the wave volume, that helps me understand the context. And right now we're in the middle. And one of the things I say all the time to the TRG people is stay out of the middle. It's the worst place to trade. So now I understand statistically we're in the middle. So this is a really silly spot, but I could have told you that anyway because there's no really dominant liquidity or dominant traded volume. Up here, we had good volume on the sell side into the ask. Down here, we had good volume on the buy side, but we're in the middle of that. And you can't manage risk in the middle. Stay the heck out of the middle. The middle is bad. You want to be at extremes. You want to be at ledges, which are the edges of the session, or you at least want to be at an edge of the range. One example of that would be the value area. Another one would be the bottom of the LRCs. That's a short-term range. So you can trade ranges also. Trading ledges is much easier when you're new because it's really obvious when you're wrong. But I like to trade this time of day. I like to just trade the range. But I'm not going to do it when we're in the middle. I have no edge there. I have an edge when we're at one end or the other of the range, and I can see it's either getting absorbed on the buy side or the sell side by the traded volume. And that gives me an entry. And it gives me a potential target and a way to manage risk. The other thing, that's really important, this document is in your streams for the Jigsaw class. This is everything that I use. This is the secret holy grail of how to scalp the way you watch me do, okay? The time of day is critical. Every time of day is different. I've done entire classes on times of day. It's called the Scalpathon, and I trade 24 hours around the clock for a couple of weeks, and I show the difference because the energy we are seeing in the market right now is what it's like in regular trading hours. It's completely different in what some people call the European session or the Asian session. In other words, the Globex for us, when the equities aren't actually open, but these are indexes, these are derivatives of the equity indexes. So how do people make decisions? Well, they make them much more extreme and they make them much less aggressively. So the time of day is critical. The next thing is just which way are we going? Often the best opportunities are counter trend in scalping futures, but you have to have an understanding of what that means. And not only which way are we going, but what's the energy like? And what I mean is, for example, every time it's gotten down here, we've come down pretty aggressively and the buyers show up. So basically it comes down and it just stops. That's called a high volume reversal. There's a bunch of them right there. There's one right there. There's one right there. And the one I was just scalping is right there, these three. So that's not in the middle. It's at the edge of the range. And I can see that it gets down there and the sellers just get absorbed. They run out of gas. That's called exhaustion and absorption. And that is what we're seeing in the traded volume. We're seeing the absorption. Exhaustion is just when the momentum stops being momentum. We're no longer going down. You combine those two things and the traded volume, and ideally at some area where there's some liquidity, because those act as magnets, and that's all you need to do to profitably scalp. Don't overcomplicate it. Don't think you need some ridiculous indicator that's $5,000 or some guy's class that's $5,000. There's no secrets. You just have to watch. This is an auction, and you have to just trade the auction. Sweeps. A sweep is when it suddenly goes one way or the other, like it just swept up. Those are just something that's really dangerous if you're scalping. So it's the third criteria I look at. If there's sweeps, I either don't trade or I make sure that it's sweeping in the direction I'm trading. So if I'm trying to get long at the low, I want it to sweep down. Once I'm in that trade, I want it to sweep up toward my profit targets or toward the areas I'm potentially targeting. So those three are the most critical. That's why they're in red. And then liquidity. I've been talking about this throughout the whole class. Where's the liquidity? It's right there. And did it trade? Look at that. There's traded volume right there. That liquidity, that white that we saw, traded right up here. So that's where the sellers are right now. So there's your inflection point to the upside, and the inflection point to the downside is where I was just buying. So that's the liquidity chunk. And then what's the range? Where are we in the range? Stay out of the middle. If we're at the edges of the range, that's powerful, particularly if we're seeing the other criteria happening. And when there's a lot of traded volume at any spot, it creates a high volume node. I said that a few minutes ago, that there's a little high volume node down here that I was leaning on. And what I mean by that is that the traded volume there was higher than it had been at other areas. Like, when the market went up this morning, we created a really nice tail to the upside where there was no volume. See, just zzz, and then there's a little chunk of volume, and then there's nothing, and then there's another little chunk of volume, and then there's a big chunk at the top. So this is a high volume node, this is low volume. And this is low volume, and this is high volume. It will go through low volume very, very quickly. And high volume nodes tend to at least pause the price, if not hold it, because by virtue of being a high volume node, that indicates that a lot of people traded there, and there's likely to be people there again. So this is it. That's the holy grail. That's the magic system to make money trading futures. All you got to do is understand how price moves, Roman, do the make ticks classes, and then it's just a matter of practice. There's no magic secrets. There's no, I don't want them to know my strategy. Everybody's strategy is the same. Take advantage of the auction so that you have an edge. And if you do that and you execute that well, you'll be profitable. But it's the process that leads to your profits, not the other way around. You don't look at the profits to judge how well you're doing. And I see this nonsense all the time, everywhere. Oh, look how good I'm doing. I made $5,000 today. And then that exact same guy, well, today was a bad day. I lost $5,000. That person has no edge. They are random in the market. They're flipping coins. That's not what happens to me. Here's my trades for today. You can't argue with that. And the reason that works is I practice execution. And I practice executing at the places where the traded volume tells me that it's a good spot, and that if I'm wrong, it'll be really obvious and I'll end up off sides, and all I got to do is get flat and get out of the way and take a little loss. Good trades work right away. Don't lose money. When you're wrong, get out of the way, flatten out, and then you've got to protect your profits. It's critical in NQ and MNQ because it moves so fast. Same thing with YM and RTY and CL. They can move ridiculously fast. So you have to take profits quickly and protect them with a trailing stop or a take profit stop as fast as you possibly can. The worst thing that can happen when you do that is you get your trailing stop or your take profit stop gets hit with a small profit. That's the point. small profits add up over time. With the exception of that one $300 example we did, almost every other trade here was, 10, 20, $50. And, it's $865. So, I don't know how else to emphasize this other than to do what I'm doing and just practically scream this at you. Learn to read the auction by learning about liquidity and traded volume. Everything else is just window dressing or training wheels. If you can trade on the domes, you can make money. That's really the whole story. Okay, that's kind of the material I have planned for today. So let me go back to the questions and comments and see what we've got. Okay, we did that. We did that one. Okay. Yeah, front running the queue a tick higher, Peter. That's a really good technique to learn. Remember that the queue moves around too. But one of the problems I have, and if you watch any of the historical videos in the library, this happens to me constantly. It will trade right up to where I am trying to get a fill, and then it will reverse. I'm in exactly the right spot. That's because I practice so much. I know what the right spot looks like. And so what I will want to do if I'm, if I really want to get filled, like in these examples, look at that liquidity right there. I'll get right above it, or now see it moved up. So, I'll get like right here. That's doing that gives me a better likelihood of getting a fill. And it might cost me a couple of ticks. The other option, when it goes down to the liquidity, if you don't get a fill, and you saw that in one of my examples, I'll go ahead and hit the market for that trade. And then if it fills, fine, because I'm in the right spot anyway. So I'll have, instead of 5, I'll have 10. And we did that just a few minutes ago. So when I see it trade down to me and I'm not getting filled or it's just above me, I sometimes will leave that order there, and then I'll just hit the buy market button, and it'll execute me immediately, and then I may or may not get the other chunk of it, but I'm prepared to take it if I can because it's the right spot. Okay, can I explain absorption again, please? Yes, absolutely. Hang on a second. I'm going to give you just a simple example, and then I'm going to show it to you on a footprint. But I'm just going to give you the thinking behind it. Okay, let's say price is going down, and there's no significant traded volume. And again, this is all in the tick maker classes that came through with this class, but this is I will elaborate on this. There's two things you're looking for. You either want absorption or exhaustion, preferably both of them. Absorption is when we come down or go up. It's the same thing depending on which way you're going. And the volume picks up, but price doesn't change. So in this case, you'd see a whole lot of volume over here on the bid side, and the price doesn't continue to go down. In other words, all of the sellers are getting absorbed by buyers. That's what's happening there. That's why the word absorption. If we're going the other way, we're going up, you want to see the big numbers on this side, because that means all of the buyers are getting absorbed by sellers. Okay. And this is just, how you read price action, and it's all in the make ticks classes. So that's what absorption is all about. Ideally, you also want to see it run out of gas, as I like to say, or exhaust. And the way you see that is by the quantities that trade. So instead of just looking for it to have high volume right at the place, that's absorbing, you want to see it run out of gas down there too, and the volume diminish as it gets there. And so the best place to see that is on a footprint chart. So let me just bring up a Sierra chart example to show you that. Okay. Let's find a simple example here or two in ES. Blow this up. Okay. Today is not a great day to do this, but okay. This is a low for these are showing periods rotation. This is every 30 minutes. And look at the bottom of this 30 minutes here. You see how it came down, and on the bottom price level there, it traded only on the bid, 21, 0 traded on the ask. Okay, so that's a bit of absorption. The number could be higher, and it didn't really exhaust because on the way down there, the numbers were really big until right there. But what you ideally want to see is what looks like this one over here. And this not only got absorbed, but as we went up, the numbers got smaller. So that's exhaustion and absorption. It doesn't always happen at one price. You want to look at it over a couple of prices. Here's another example here where it exhausted and then got absorbed at the bottom. We call that a price rejector when it does both of those things. And the highlighting you're seeing of that, this is Lee's company makes a tool called Emoji. He has a product called Emoji Tools, and I can just turn that off so you can see what it looks like without that. It's still there, but you have to learn how to read the numbers yourself. And you can get a tool that helps you see it. But those patterns are still in the traded volume at those same places. See right here? I have to know what the numbers mean, and that's what the free makes tick courses that we included with your class will teach you guys. So everything you need to know is available. You just have to go do the homework. Okay, so let's see. So that's Larry's question. And again, Larry, let me know, and this is to everybody, when you ask a question, if I answer it, please say, okay, thank you, or yes, or if you have a follow-up question. So at least I know whether, you understood the answer. So please do that, because I can't see you guys, obviously. Okay. I only do trades inside movings. Not necessarily. One of the again, I'm going to talk about setups on Thursday more, Roman. There's a couple of different setups I do, but I look for extremes, whether it's the range or volume or absorption and exhaustion. I'm looking for places where the price is likely to change, because that's the best places to scalp. The other thing you can scalp is momentum. And we don't get trending markets very often. But there's an example in the pit that I posted of what's called a gap and go. And that's where the market will gap one way or the other, and then it will just keep going. And typically, if the market's going to trend, this is what it will look like. So this is one of the days last week, and this was a gap and go trend day up on last Wednesday, and then we had a gap and go trend day down the next day. In this example, it would be really stupid to try to fade or sell the extremes here. Instead, what you would be looking to do is find a place to join this significant momentum to the upside. And that's a completely different topic, but that's the other way to do it. As a scalper, you're generally looking to either join momentum or you're looking to fade extremes of the range or of the session. Because momentum can be very powerful when we have it. The problem with only trading trending momentum is that the futures markets don't do it very often. People always say, oh, I'm only trading trends. If there's no trend, it's choppy. Today's choppy, I'm not trading. When someone's saying stuff like that, they're demonstrating how little they know about the markets. Equity index futures only trade between 12 and 15% of the days of the year. So if that's all you're doing, you're not going to trade much. And it's really hard to determine that you have a trend day until it gets going like this. And so that's a really stupid way to look at the markets, trending. What you want to look at instead, and that's why the language is different than the word trend here on my elements, I'm looking for directionality right now. And that's what the LRCs are useful for. And that's what looking at the tapes is useful for. Ideally, I want to see the market push to an extreme and then ideally run over the stops and blow that extreme just a little bit. And then that's the perfect spot to jump in and trade it back the other way, because basically all the people that bought down there got stopped out. And so when they're getting stopped out, they're selling, and that's where I'm buying. And that's the trades I was literally just doing. So directionality is what matters. Trends are very unusual in the futures markets, particularly in the equity indexes. Oil can trend pretty well. Gold, not so much lately. A lot of the regular, wheat and corn and pork bellies, some of those markets trend really, really well, but they're also a lot harder to trade because there's some fundamentals there. The beauty of trading the equity indexes is that we are a derivative of the equities. So as long as you know what the equities are doing, you have all the information you need. So good questions. Will I cover the volume numbers on the LRCs? Okay, I think you're talking about My wave volume, you're talking about these little numbers, those are not numbers on the LRCs. That's called wave volume. And it's one of the tools in the template that I'm going to share with you guys. If you have Ninja, we also have people that have shared an equivalent version of it. It's basically a zigzag of the volume. Is that what you're asking me, James? Yes. Okay. So yeah, that's just from the last push the other way, like this move down here. Let's stretch this way out. So okay, see, we were this is called ebb and flow right here when the market's just going back and forth. And then for some reason it started getting sold really hard. We came down really aggressively, 5.4, so that's 5,400 contracts. And then not only did it exhaust, but it got absorbed on a candlestick chart like this. Absorption looks like a wick like that. And so it created a high volume reversal because whatever that momentum was, whatever created that sharp move down, it ended. And so that would have been an ideal place to look for a long scalp. And in fact, you could have done it there, there, and there because it came down so aggressively, and then the next pullback was only 600 and then another 2K down, but it held that same area. You don't look for double bottoms or double tops, but roughly this area, there's buyers down here. And that's what I was just doing when we were doing those trades at the lows a little while ago. I was seeing buyers at the lows and the volume exhausting, and I was jumping in. So that's really the same answer. It's just a chart view of it, of exhaustion and absorption. That's what it is. Good question. Okay, is it possible to take a look at your losing trades that you did? No, no, it's not. Roman, you don't understand enough about how price moves. Looking at my losing trades would not teach you anything at all. First of all, I don't have very many of them. I mean, just to be honest with you, um, this is the month for me. And it's a slow month because I have COVID and the flu. It's 10 grand. And every day is a winner, and my win rate's 95%. So for me to go back and show you, some losers I had in 2020, that wouldn't be educational at all. You need to learn how price moves. You need to go through the tick maker courses, and you also need to understand. You asked this question a couple of different ways, like the leaderboard and the question about whether or not they can determine your strategy. There's no secrets. Okay, watching another trader lose or win doesn't mean anything. It's about you. You have to learn the skill. I'm telling you what the pieces of the skill are. They're these. That's the things you need to learn. If you learn those and you practice, that's how you become a good trader. The places I'm losing and the places I'm winning don't mean anything to you, because I'm a better executor than you are. You need to learn to execute. And the way you learn to execute the trades is by practicing. That's how it works. There's no other secret sauce. It's just that. And I can't figure out a way to emphasize this enough to you. You're in a very common state of mind for newer traders. How can I get rich quick, and how can I find the holy grail of indicators to help me do that? Wrong answer. Right answer is learn how price moves and how the auction works, and then practice executing against how the auction works. That's how you make money trading any futures contract, particularly any of the 4 equity indexes. Are you understanding what I'm saying to you, Roman? I hope I'm saying it. This is tough love you're hearing. I'm emphasizing it because you're just totally on the wrong track with your thinking, and you'll never be successful if you continue to think that way. You have to make a commitment to learning. And the first thing you have to do is go take the tick maker classes so you understand how price moves from one place to another. There's no magic indicator. It's just an auction. There's buyers and sellers that are going to be aggressive at different prices for different reasons. And we don't care what their strategy is. We just care whether they're being aggressive or not and where they're doing it. That's it. End of the conversation. Learn that and you're on your way. Okay, let's see. Yeah, exactly. You get consistent, Bob. That's correct, by practicing, not by watching somebody else. That's why, a trading room is a complete waste of money, where somebody's calling their trades and their levels and all that. You'll never learn anything in that environment because, number one, you want to focus on the process, not where the price levels are. Price levels are nonsense because they, as we just saw, they're constantly changing. The area I might want to buy in could be 20 points different between, the first time it comes down and the next time it comes down. So, now we're at the other end of the range and we're seeing sellers up here. So, it's a dynamic environment. So there's no such thing as a price level that's a good or a bad price level. We call them inflection points, and they change constantly because the auction changes constantly. There could be a really aggressive buyer at the low, and that could be why every time we got down here, we saw buying. And what if the next time we go down there, that guy's done? He's done all the buying he's going to do. This is just a very oversimplified example. Then what's going to happen? Well, we're probably going to go lower until we find more buyers. It's that simple. It's just an auction. Okay. Steve Cooper, how do I determine momentum so you can stay out of a fade? I use three things for that. Number one, I look at where we are relative to the VWAP. Are we at an extreme? Because if we have momentum going one direction or another, it tends to turn at extremes like this one or this one. Although today we don't have a lot of extremes. So that's one of the things I'm looking for. But it's not like there's a magic way to see where the momentum's going to start and stop. As I said, this tape right here that shows me how fast the tape's moving, that's a really good gauge of momentum. When it's moving really fast, we've got a lot of momentum. And if it's moving really fast and we're going up, we have upside momentum. And where's it going to end when it ends? You can't try to predict that. You can look for magnets like liquidity, but momentum ends when it ends. And you join it if it's aggressive enough that you can see a logical spot to come into it. But that's way beyond this class. That's the kind of thing that we do in TRG with all of our, we do live trading every day in TRG. For example, the class that I'm doing right now for TRG members, the care and feeding of inflection points. That's exactly what I do in that class. And the closing class on Fridays, gaming the equities close. We're looking for momentum like short squeezes, which happen very, very frequently on Friday afternoons at the close. And that's one of the setups. I will join a short squeeze, and I explain in that class every Friday what a short squeeze looks like. It's a relentless bid. The bid just keeps coming up under the market, and the people on the ask keep lifting it. But the second that stops happening, the momentum's over. And so there isn't, you can't use a momentum indicator. There's nothing that works because it's always too late. And that's one of the reasons I like to look at the traded volume in the swings like this, because it will usually form, if momentum is ending, these are called equivolume charts. And the thickness of the candle is the volume. And when you get a wick at one end or the other like that, that's usually a good opportunity. See these little wicks here? Because that's a sign of exhaustion. The volume is below there. See, there's a little wick right there. That will often help you catch the end of momentum. But here's an example of upside momentum that was pretty strong. Look at this here. We're working our way up the range and we're not getting much of a pullback. And these bright green, we keep making higher highs. So at the moment, we have momentum to the upside. But the absolute hardest thing to scalp is momentum because you never know where it's going to start and stop. Inflection points at the ledges of the session or the edges of the range are much easier to learn. And so that's where I recommend you start, not trying to trade momentum. Momentum is really difficult to trade. The only exception to that is a short squeeze, and we don't get them very often. But when we do, they're really obvious, and that's the only real exception. Good question. I assume the mentoring I talked about. Yeah, let me address that for a minute. I coach people one-on-one. And there's a very limited number of people. I have 3 right now, and I have 4 others that have expressed interest that I've been communicating with on and off for the last couple of months. But I am very particular about who I will coach, and they have to be a certain level of along the way and have done, a certain amount of work. Otherwise, I can't really help them. But I talk to everybody, I'll talk to anybody for free and kind of feel out where you're at and whether or not I can help you. The problem right now, because of this kind of COVID flu thing I have, is my energy is really limited. So there's a couple of people I've been talking to for several months, and I feel bad. There's a few of them in the room right now that I just haven't been able to get back to them and really, go through whether it's a fit for us or not, because I simply don't have time or energy right now. So I hope going into the fall, once I get completely over this, that I'll be able to take on a couple more people. The cost is totally variable. It depends on how frequently we meet and where you are. And, we work one-on-one. There's a couple of people in the room right now that I'm doing that with. I only do it if I think I can make you better over some period of time. But another factor with that is I won't just, do coach for an hour. You have to make a commitment, and it's a monthly commitment. And again, the rate varies a lot. So I don't want to just quote a rate because it depends on what it is that you need help with and how much of my time it will take. And, it's much cheaper than it should be. Most people are surprised at how inexpensive it is relative to what other people charge for coaching. But, for me, I've been doing this a long time, and what's much more valuable to me than how much you pay me to coach you is how much I can improve you. I get a lot more out of that than the money. The money at this point isn't as meaningful. But at the moment, I have no openings, and I have a 4-person waiting list. So it could be a little while before that's available again. But the first thing I have to do is get completely over my COVID flu, and then get back in and work with the people that I've already started working with a little bit. To see if there's a fit. So that's kind of the short answer on that whole subject. Let's see. On this course, I saw how MNQ moves, your confidence in the movements, not to mention the existence of the features at all. So, okay. Well, it wasn't really a secret, Roman, but it was something that you didn't know that you learned in class, and that's perfect. But again, what I'm warning is, I'm warning you when I'm talking about secrets. There are a lot of people that, learn the secrets of floor traders, or learn my secret algorithm, and you should just run away from that, because anybody marketing that is probably marketing nonsense. It really, I don't know any exceptions to that statement. So, oh, wow. Yeah, you need to. And also, Steve, just go look in the library. Go watch, the Friday closing sessions. And I think the JVC, are they in price action? Where are those?
Which ones? The trading the close, gaming the close?
Yeah, gaming the close.
Yeah, those are all in the price action.
Okay, I'm going
the live examples section.
Okay, so here, let's go to the library right now, and I'll show you where you can find some of those. Go watch some of the recordings, and you'll learn a lot. So, price action scalping live examples, is that where it is?
Yep.
Okay, so go into that, and you can see, okay, there's Friday's close. There's the Friday before it. Scalping the FOMC. There's the Friday before that. There's the Friday before that. Trading the NFP, trading the ISM. There's the Friday before that. See, everything is there. And so, yeah, you should definitely spend some time in the library if you're already a member. You're not taking advantage of your membership. So that's the answer for you, Steve. Absolutely. Yep, the biohacking was the first one in TRG. Yeah, there's a bunch of us that are biohackers that, you really need to do that if you're going to survive in this world, because it's trading world. It's stressful and it taps your energy in ways you're not used to. So, learning how to manage your caffeine and your protein and, whatever else you're using is a big thing. And yeah, so that's a fun one. There was a bunch of interesting roundtables in the library where we've talked about all kinds of subjects, like your significant others. They will never understand what you do. And one of the things here, let me go back. Let me go back to the library real quick. There's a series, there's a bunch of, there's thousands of videos in there. And one of the ones that is there is a series called The Roundtables, where we kind of just sit around and talk for a couple of hours about something. Roundtable discussions. That's the biohacking one that we were just talking about. Combines and other people's money. Conquering bad habits. Fight or flight, finding and developing your Bubba, your edge. And we actually did that twice. Surviving funks, journaling, myths, what you do, explaining it to family and friends, significant others. There's some really good videos in here. So, if you are a TRG member, you should definitely be taking advantage of the library. And not enough people do. It shocks us, but a lot of people just never use it, which doesn't make any sense. But there's a lot of good material there. Cool. All right. I think I have covered everything, and now we're actually right at the end of the time that I have, so we're going to have to wrap up. We're just at an hour and a half, actually an hour and 36 minutes here. So let me go ahead and ask if there's any other questions or burning desires for anything that you just have to get off your chest or have answered. Otherwise, we will wrap this session up, and JVC will get you the video as soon as possible. And I will see you guys definitely on Thursday for our next class session, and then on the following Saturday for our wrap up. And I'm going to try to do, as I said, an ad hoc session on Friday for NFP, but I can't promise that until I see how a couple personal things shake out. So there will be more announcement or lack of an announcement on that in the next day or two. Okay, I think we're all caught up with the questions. I don't see any new ones. Thank you. I appreciate it, guys. Thank you, JVC.
You're very
thanks,
welcome.
Bob.
Absolutely.
I always appreciate the good feedback and your assistance.
No problem. And by the way, real quick, since this was just asked in the pit, but since we're still on a call, I'm sure all of you could benefit from hearing this. Just so everyone knows, you do get permanent access to the recordings of this. So it's not like you've got 1 or 2 weeks after this or a month after this or whatever. It's, as long as TRG exists, you have access to the recordings. So there's your answer to Jim in the pit. I will also write it in the pit, but just so you all know, you have the recordings in perpetuity.
Right. Cool. All right. And obviously you have access to the ones that apply to you. If you're a TRG member,
of course,
you have the whole library except for premium classes that you didn't attend. But there's thousands of videos. You could start now and go till Christmas and you wouldn't go through everything. And some of them are really good. If you want to see Lee's style, he's not as a price action scalper like me. He's a structural trader. And, his approach is completely different, and you can learn a lot from that, even if you don't trade that approach. I certainly have. So, all right. Can the premium classes be bought after the event? Yes, we usually will allow you to buy the recordings. Some of them kind of grandfather in, like after 3 to 6 months, we'll put them up for everybody. But in general, if there's a class that's already happened, like the Scalpathon from a couple of months ago, if you want to buy the recordings, we'll work something out really cheap. Just send, JVC a message and we'll figure it out and get back to you. But somebody just did that with the Scalpathon and $99. Just for those recordings. And, it's a course I did 6 months ago or whatever. And so, we're always willing to do that. Look, we're not about how many ways can we squeeze you for money. We're trying to develop a community of traders that support each other. So, everything we can do, we will try to do. Okay, that was a good question. All right, let's go ahead and wrap it up. I will see you guys later on. Don't forget, if you're TRG members, that the schedule's flip-flop tomorrow and Thursday. Tomorrow's Trading the Stats. Thursday is care and feeding of inflection points for TRG members, and then our next Jigsaw class is also Thursday. All right.
That's right. I had actually forgotten about that myself, so thanks for the reminder. I'll see you guys tomorrow at Trading the Stats.
Cool. And if you're interested in mentoring or coaching, the thing to do is to send me or whoever you want to do it. JVC does it, Lee does it. If you're interested in doing it with me, send me a private message in the pit. That's a capability you have. Click on my name and you'll see, send private message. But again, I have to be fair here. I've got 4 people that I started talking to, and then I got sick, and then I started talking to them again, and then I got sick again. And so, what I've done, I'm just going to wait till I'm not sick anymore. And then I need to work through with those people, whether, they want to go forward and whether there's a good fit or not. And, then there might be some new openings, but I really limit the number of people because I really invest a lot of time and energy in your success and the success of the people I coach. And so it's really draining. So, I only take on a few at a time and only the ones that I really feel like I can help. A lot of people come to me and they say, I'm having trouble finding an edge. That's not a coaching problem. That's you need more education problem. You should watch more videos and come to more live sessions. I can't help you find an edge. But if you have an edge and you need help executing better, that's where I can help you. And that's an example of 2 of the people I'm working with right now. They have a really good understanding of what they have to do. So all we're doing is working on the quality of their execution, and we're critiquing that and looking at ways to improve it, and because that's what you got to do. That's how you get good at this. All right. Yeah. I don't look at your P&L to decide whether or not to coach you. In fact, the P&L is the least important thing. I look at, do you have a good process, and do you understand the nature of how the markets work and the nature of having an edge? An edge is a statistical advantage, some place where when you trade, you're more likely to win than you lose if you do it right. An example of that would be, if you're playing poker, one of your edge is learning the cards and the odds of the cards, and then your also equally important edge is reading the other players and what they have. And if you can do those two things well, you can play poker well. Then you just have to practice different situations, like if I get a pair of kings, what should I do? If I get a pair of aces, what should I do? And that's a really good example of how it works. If you don't understand the poker game, then I'm not going to coach you into learning the poker game. You have to know the game to start, and then I can help you get better at it by focusing on where you're weak and where you're strong, and emphasizing the strong, and teaching you out and coaching you out of the weak. That's how we do it. All right, we're going to wrap up. I'll see you guys later on.